I've ranked 4,600 some movies. I've given 23 films 5 stars. I expected this to be like between a 4.5. This is a 4.5 approaching a 5. I don't give a 5 star until the second viewing. This is in my top 100 movies of all time. It's approaching.
Wow.
I adore this film.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Aftershow. But I shouldn't call it just another episode of the Aftershow because this is our first double feature episode of the Aftershow. And yes, I am talking about the worldwide phenomenon known as Barbenheimer. And I'm so excited
for Barbenheimer.
Coy Jandreau, our very special guest. There's nobody else that could Barbenheimer this episode like you. And I know that for a fact.
And I knew you'd Barbie, so I had to Oppenheimer. I love that I was like, okay, who am I doing this show with? I'm doing it with Barbie yourself, so let's Oppenheimer it up. And I'm very excited about it.
Such a compliment. I'm glad that everybody's finally starting to catch up on the Barbie thing because I've been Barbieing for 10 years.
More. Come on. You've been a Barbie of the people for quite some time.
I've talked about this on my social media, but I Barbied for Quentin Tarantino. I showed up at the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood premiere in pink, okay?
I also think that we're now seeing Barbie as the icon she is in a positive. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about the movie is that we see what a Barbie is. And I think a new 100%. Generation is about to find out what a Barbie is. And that's interesting because Oppenheimer is the same thing. I think these are two mythical figures, one fiction, one nonfiction that represent so much more. So for them to be one thing as Barbenheimer is amazing.
An analysis of mid-century America. There's my intellect for the day.
No, it's mid-century America. It's capitalism. It's voyeurism. It's a commentary on like what cinema is to people. It's a commentary on what metamodernism is today to box office. And I think we'll look back on this in the same way that Barbie looked back on The Godfather. Like there's a lot of like self-reflection mirroring in both these movies. There's like Fight Club references in Barbie. There's Godfather references. So it's gathering a lot of masculinity. But I think that this is going to be the feminine energy that the masculinity of Godfather and Fight Club are in movie for future filmmakers 20 years from now.
So everybody else can go back, rewind that, and then slow motion it and watch it again. And because it went...
And it's a lot of those things. It's really, and Oppenheimer's a hyper masculine film versus this beautifully feminine film. We will look at this weekend for 10 years.
We're going to unpack a lot today, but yes, we are going to be unpacking this for a very long time. By the way, this is a spoiler-filled episode, so if you haven't Barbenheimered, you should Barbenheimer and then come back and watch. Okay, so let's first talk about the fact that the box office was boffo.
Yes.
162 million for Barbie, 82.4 for Oppenheimer for a cool $244 million. And then in its totality, including Mission Impossible, other films that were out in theaters, the fourth biggest weekend of all time in North America behind, Infinity War, Endgame, and then The Force Awakens.
My boys.
It's like crazy.
But
it's crazy.
I love the fact that these are two original films.
Yes.
One of them is an IP, but it's still the first of a franchise, which I hope has 10
100%.
installments like Avengers. Like I hope we get to the point where there's like 25 of these. But I don't think people are giving it the credit that it's the first time this has happened with two firsts. Yeah. Like this isn't Avengers Endgame. That movie had so much lead up, so much build up. Like you had to have 23 movies set up Endgame to have that kind of box office. This is the #2 non-holiday box office Monday of all time. Today's box office, or yesterday's, is the #2 ever that wasn't on a holiday for Barbie.
Were you as giddy as I was all weekend? I swear. Our producer said, "How was your weekend?" And I was like, "I don't think I did anything, but kept refreshing my computer to look at the box office
I
numbers."
went to Comic-Con. So
you were at Comic-Con.
Every time
you actually had something to do.
Well, I had 8 panels. So in between every panel, I was checking the box office like it was the stock market. So it was so funny. I was like really busy. I was like, how's it going? And it was so beautiful to just see the joy of it because it was all a celebration. It wasn't a winner or loser. It was we were all at the movies. And I love that like the next spot was Tom Cruise, who's Mr. Movies. Like I love that everything was just revelry.
And it was joyful in the sense of we obviously love movies and we're movie fans, but I had more calls from people who don't necessarily go to the movies and are like, I'm going to Barbenheimer, which one should I do first? Or I went and saw Barbie and I loved it, or I went and saw. And this is what excites me even more, is that because of this phenomenon, you had people from two different, maybe who wouldn't necessarily have seen the other. And when I went to a press screening, so I'm always a little nervous. Like, are the Barbie fans who are like 20 going to see Oppenheimer? I'm not judging anybody, but for the most part, that was the consensus, is that some of these people who are 20 and going dressed in pink with their friends and are going to go see Oppenheimer, are they going to like it?
Right.
And they did.
That's what's so beautiful is it's going to open up a whole new, we're going to look back at this box office, not just because of the numbers, but because it's going to expose a lot of people to different genres, to different styles of filmmaking, to different actors. Like, it's actually pretty shocking that there weren't any crossover actors considering the scope of these casts. But like, it's really interesting to be like, I'm going to go from Barbie, who is like, you know, Ryan Gosling, Margot Robbie, to like, who's that incredible character actor? Or like, what's this Nolan guy? And they probably know him from The Dark Knight and stuff, but they might have like made Nolan fans out of people that Barbenheimered. And Greta Gerwig's definitely going to have some people that like they're going to discover her older work, which is more independent in nature than what Nolan's been doing lately. So I think honestly, this wasn't just a celebration of these two movies. It was truly a celebration of cinema, because people calling you to ask which one to see first means they're invested even in the order of the experience of Barbenheimer. Now, I actually did the Barbenheimer. Did you? Have you yet to?
I Barbied because it was press screening. So I actually did the Barbie Haunted Mansion, because I did Barbie and then Haunted Mansion that night. And then Oppenheimer I did the next day.
So within 24 hours?
Within 24 hours,
okay, so
yes. But you Barbenheimer, tell me about your experience Barbenheimering.
I saw a 12:15 Barbie and I had a 3 o'clock Oppenheimer.
Which is the correct order to do it in.
It's called Barbenheimer, not Oppenbee. Like, it is the right method. Because honestly, I think you can do it however you want because you're supporting cinema, so I appreciate you. But I think the oppressive doom that you walk away with from Oppenheimer shouldn't go into Barbie.
Shouldn't go into Barbie.
Like,
I agree. People were asking
Barbie.
me, and a lot of people, I think the conventional wisdom originally was see Oppenheimer first and then end on a high note. And I was like, no, you don't want to go into Barbie with Oppenheimer energy. The other way around.
Yeah, because I definitely also I went and got in and out between, because I was like 50s bopping. Like I was feeling like this like lovely Americana.
For that?
It definitely felt right. I went to the Americana, I went to the nice bigger in and out, and I just looked around. I'm like, yeah, Barbie energy. I had the Kenergy that I brought to
By the way,
burger.
as you're talking, I think you should be in the sequel. I think if there's a Ken spinoff,
need it.
You
the Kenergy that I bring with
you bring beyond a lot of Kenergy.
There's no version I'm not Ken for Halloween, which I know everyone will be. That's going to be this year's like Jack Sparrow, but I accept that I'll be the better Ken.
And
not that there's better Kens, but I'm
going to Barbie. But I've picked out a Barbie that no one's done yet, that I haven't seen yet.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So like the way that I did it, I think is a really wonderful journey, because the high of Barbie, you go in with more energy to go into Oppenheimer, which I think is neat. It's a 3-hour film and it's a very big experience of a film. But I also felt that the end of my 6-hour journey, that last hour of Oppenheimer, is so aggressive and so intense. So I felt the cumulative nature of Barbenheimer in a way that felt like a hydrogen bomb, because I'd been at the movies for 6 hours. So like the 5-hour mark, it's building to that crescendo of the crazy courtroom and everything. And I was just like, I've lived cinema. And it felt so much that I could have written a thesis paper on Barbie when it was done. But when Oppenheimer was done, I sat in silence during the credits and just felt the weight of the experience.
A lot of people have said that so you do sit there through the credits. And I actually sat through the credits of Barbie, because weirdly, and let's start getting into our review of Barbie. First, I'll just mention this is what I love about both of these films too. They twinned with the tomato meter scores, with the audience score and the critics score. Yeah. So Barbie had a 90% critic score and then a 90% audience score, and then we'll get to it a little bit later. But Oppenheimer had a 94. I'm like, you two are just so cute.
You guys are made for each other. Look at you two.
Never break up. Never break up.
Their lives are forever entwined. Even if they get divorced, they're sharing custody.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so the critics' consensus. So I should mention also the records that Barbie did break, because it made $162 million, like I said, at the domestic box office. The best opening of 2023, beating Super Mario Brothers movie, which I'm shocked. And
I love you, Mario, but thank you, Barbie.
Exactly. The biggest opening by a female director. Anna Boden was co-director of Captain Marvel, as you know, and Patty Jenkins' Wonder Woman were both beat. And yeah, combined total, 244.4, fourth highest box office in history. So just overall, your thoughts on Barbie?
Overall thoughts on Barbie. Wow. Okay. Barbie, I think, is one of the better new uses. And if you guys follow me or know my work, you know I love this study of art. But metamodernism is what I think we are succeeding at as a culture right now.
Okay, explain what that is.
So metamodernism is like sincere irony simultaneously with ironic sincerity. So it's the idea that you're smiling and crying at the same time, that there's a wink to the knowledge that it's something that is self-aware of itself, but not in a way that's patronizing. So the Lego movie is a great example of metamodernism. Deadpool as a character is a great example of metamodernism. Everything that Donald Glover has done as Childish Gambino from late camp through Because of the Internet and slightly into his new era of Redbone. That feel of knowing you're in something while the audience is with you, and I think the internet's a large part of that. The internet is basically the audience, but it's incorporated into the thing you're making. Marketing has become metamodernistic. The way that we're using memes as part of the culture, Cocaine Bear is metamodernistic. So this lens of which we're watching things that are educational, but knowing that it's like, we're going to make a very, very sincere Barbie movie, but also the dialogue is going to make it known that it's funny, but also these actors are in it in a way that is sincerely ironic. The entire performance that Margot and Ken do,
100%.
like, I didn't even call him Ryan, I said Ken. That's how much he was Ken. But what they put in there was this self-awareness that is also sincere to the story. And a lot of times these multiversal movies, the way this goes from the world of Barbie land into our world, that's the definition of it, because it's meta in that it's overlooking something, but it's modern in a way that's sincere, not like the 90s when it'd be like, oh, they're trapped in this world, like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It's not metamodernistic, it's more of a commentary. And Oppenheimer's a little bit more of a commentary, because it's talking about the birth of the H-bomb and the A-bomb, but that's also at the end kind of like, well, we're leading towards AI. There's more of a commentary there. So Barbie for me was one of the better examples of how to do it in a very, very saccharine, bright, and in an incredibly like stimulating
digestible way.
But still digestible in a way that is teaching lessons that I was so impressed at the fact that Barbie is a 50s icon. She's classic Americana. She's all these things. And all they needed to do was one simple flip of a switch where you made the supporting character what would have been a female character in this era of filmmaking, a male character. And instead of making it all female energy, it's male Kenergy that is simply the masculine tropes of our and that time, and you flipped it. So he's not a weak character. He's not a dumb character. He's not an anything character. He's a character that would have been supporting. So the Barbie world is a matriarchy, and our world is a patriarchy, and it's not even a commentary in a way that's judging either. It's acknowledging either.
And thank you for getting it. And of course you do, but thank you for pointing it out in such a simple way, because that is exactly what it is. So anybody who says it's male bashing,
it's not. It's not. Look at any movie. Hell, look at movies today. I'm not even going to say from before. Look at how so many men treat women today. They take away their autonomy. They take away the way they're they take away everything that makes a person to serve them in a way that is so inhuman. And then they think that anyone that stands up to just being a level of human is feminism in a swear word way. Feminism is equality, and this movie isn't about a feminism that is bashing men or a feminism that is putting one below the other. It is saying like, hey, imagine a world where we're actually equal, and that transition of power has to happen in a way that feels jarring. It's a pendulum swing. I think a big problem with society right now is we're fighting towards equality, and the pendulum has to swing a little higher, and sometimes it feels like oppression and a little lower, but oppression only feels like oppression when you've been someone below someone else. Like equality is going to feel like oppression to the majority. So I thought the movie handled beautifully Ken being a woman from the 50s time, played as a male with male energy, that just showed how imbalanced things are. And it's a beautiful fable of what things should and could be. And some of my favorite elements, since we're in spoilers, is him like the patriarchy that doesn't involve horses as much as I hope. Like there were elements of just pure humor to make us go like, okay, you're not trying to grandstand me. You're not trying to beat this over my head. This is just not a world that's acceptable. And I thought it handled all that really well. Thought the comedy was genius. I thought the use of Alan was really clever because it gave us an eye line.
Was Alan in on the joke? Because I feel he played it almost so sincerely.
100%. Like I feel like Alan was a great example of, in a world of Kens, when you're Alan, you're just trying to find your place in the world. So his arc was genius because he found his place amongst the Barbies because he didn't have other Kens. He didn't know where he belonged. To me, he was almost to use like the sexual spectrum, he was like an asexual character in a world of you know, either hetero homosexuals, where he's like, I'm the one of one. Where do I fit in these two camps? And like, what do I do? And then he found his happiness by like accepting himself as Alan, but all of Ken's clothes fit me.
You know, it's so interesting. I've had so many males reach out to me since seeing Barbie who will say, I'm Alan. I'm not beautiful? A Ken. A lot of guys like, you know, I would figure a lot of guys would be like, well, of course, I'm Ken. I'm like the star of the show kind of thing. But a lot of guys are reaching out going, I'm an Alan.
And the message at the end where like Barbie can be a mom. Barbie can be a mom that's a president. Barbie can be anyone. I think that's a really important message for people that think that one, for men or women that feel like they have to be president, and two, men that think that women that are stay-at-home moms are any lesser than a mom that is president, a mom that is running a company, a mom that is CEO. That's a full-time job. That's awesome. Like that is a powerful position in our society. And I love that Barbie not only had to go through her walkabout journey, and I love robots becoming autonomous journey, like the sci-fi of the 70s. And I love that this film had Barbie become self-aware in a human way while referencing 70s tropes, and it had the male figure become self-aware in a way that referenced 70s tropes, but also our modern, like he dressed like Tyler Durden, like the modern masculinity tropes. But they both had their own heroes' journeys of self-autonomy while Alan got to find his way, while audiences get to find out who identify with, and then while everyone gets to realize like, oh, these ideas that I've been treating people with are not fair because they have their own journey to go on, and it made $250 million.
I literally feel warm after you just said it. I'm like, you go, Coy.
It's all those things in one beautifully funny movie.
No, it is. I have to say, and this is what I was going to say before we started talking about Barbie, was that the way you said you sat in Oppenheimer and didn't leave, that's how I sat in Barbie.
Wonderful.
And the moment that made me, I spontaneously burst into tears, and I didn't understand why, was just the montage of all the girls at the very end that they showed.
Yeah.
Just hit me in such a way. And it was such, I thought of my mom. I just thought of my mom being a mom.
Yeah.
My mom was a teacher who then decided to be a stay-at-home mom and raise my brother and I. But it was just like, it was such, because no matter your relationship to Barbie, because I did not have a complicated relationship with Barbie growing up. It was all love. I had no problem with Barbie growing up ever. And so, but that's the message of the movie, that no matter what your relationship with Barbie is, and that was what the montage encapsulated, is all types of different. And I sat there and I cried. And the second I walked out, I saw a rep from Warner Brothers, and she was like, "So what'd you think?" And I was the only person in pink, by the way, at the screening, because it was all critics. And apparently, before I came in, they had to buzz you in. It was at a place where you had to be let in. And one of the people there were like, "There's a girl here all in pink. Do you think she's trying to crash the screening?" And somebody from Warner Brothers is like, "No, that's Nikki Novak." We
already know. No photo required. We go ahead and let her in.
We know who that is. So I was the girl that I am the Barbie girl. Like, I've been dressing in pink for years. I was the girl that went into this movie, and my favorite part of the movie was the first 30 minutes because that was the world. And like, let's just give production design the Oscar now, because if you look behind the scenes about how they shot it, because it is so surreal, the world, and it was obviously shot on a stage but looks like a real world. It is extraordinary. I almost wish they went even further with that, like when she was with the waffle and the whipped cream and the coffee, because one thing you do as a kid when you play with Barbies, whether or not you had a Barbie house, I had a Barbie house that was, a lot of the walls are flat.
Yeah.
And stuff's just sort of drawn in. So like the cupboards, but you will have a cup and you will have this. I would have even gone further with that.
Yeah, and played around with like depth of field and
depth of field and all that. I wanted to even, and I know Margot's one request was when she talked to Greta about writing the script, because Margot produced it and approached Greta.
Right.
She said, "I just want to slide from the bedroom down to the pool," and that was the
that
dream.
walk-off moment. I love that she walked onto the pool. I love that they didn't like immediately the world, because she slides down and then steps onto the pool and walks away, and you're like, that's Barbie.
Yes. And then there was like when she jumps off, and that was the whole thing when you take a Barbie from the top floor down to, and how she jumps off, and that was like an homage to Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah.
And then in the background, somebody pointed out there was a Jackie O.
Oh, I didn't notice
thing.
that.
And early on, I think it was like, I want to say it was in the 80s, somebody made a point, I don't remember who it was, "Are you a Jackie O or are you a Marilyn?" And it was almost like an insult having to choose between the two. And that was that was an intention of
That's
Greta.
fantastic.
Isn't that
I want to
cool?
watch this with the Marvel lens of give me your Easter eggs, give me your references, give me your.
From you.
No, it's coming next.
No less.
I wanted one enjoyment run. Now I'm going to dive in and really frame by frame.
Did you see the Quentin Tarantino picture of him outside the
Out
Bruin?
in Westwood? Yes.
In the very spot where Margot Robbie shot her scene from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And
He's
I'm
there.
like, when the teacher becomes the student.
It made me so happy to see him doing the Barbenheimer double
Why
feature
wasn't he in
there.
pink? Why was he not wearing pink? That would if he was wearing a Barbenheimer t-shirt, I would have lost.
That would have been
my
the best.
soul
That would have been as good as Tom buying the tickets. Like that would have been the same level of marketing of like this is how it's done.
Yes. Anything else that were sort of your favorite parts, or any criticisms that you have for the film?
Honestly, so I went in expecting, like, I've only given 23 films 5 stars in all. I've ranked 4,600 some movies. I've given 23 films 5 stars. I expected this to be like between a 4, 4.5. This is a 4.5 approaching a 5. I don't give a 5 star until the second viewing. This isn't my top 100 movies of all time. It's approaching.
Wow.
Like, yeah, I adore this film. Like, so what I love about modern filmmaking is we can teach kids what the world can be without it feeling like a history book, without it feeling like heavy-handed. And I think that was a really important phase of us addressing that America has not solved a lot of its problems that we painted over. I feel like we're an apartment in Hollywood that just like lost its tenants in 10 years, and instead of changing the building, they just painted over it. And we do a lot of that painting over. And I think that we've addressed a lot of the obvious inequalities, and they're not solved, but we've addressed them. And I don't think that we've addressed the inequality of male to female well. I think we've made movies that feel like either an attack or a dismission. And I don't feel like this is either. And I feel like this is going to be really good for young boys and young girls. So to me, this was a movie that was as entertaining as it was important. And that's really hard to do. Fight Club's my favorite movie of all time. But Fight Club has the worst PR in the world. Fight Club is loved by the worst people, and I love that I can meet someone and say that, and they can judge me, and I can know how they see Fight Club versus how I see Fight Club. I love that Tyler Durden is my favorite protagonist for 10 years until I realized he was an antagonist, and then realizing he was an antagonist made me realize what that movie was.
Is he your Barbie?
He's my Barbie, 100%. And that Ken was Tyler made me so happy because Ken went through his Tyler phase, even visually. And at one point they reference Fight Club by doing all the Kens standing in a line in a row, and they say like something together like welcome. There's a scene in Fight Club.
A Fight Club reference?
So in Fight Club,
I didn't realize
the first time you see Tyler is Jack is in his hotel and he's talking about insomnia, and Jack is laying on the couch and he goes like he's giving a beautiful monologue about everything blending together when you have insomnia and all these things. The first time you see Brad Pitt in the movie isn't on the walkway escalator at the airport. It's in the bottom right-hand frame. He's one of the waiters and he goes, welcome. And in Barbie, they have all the Kens line up and do a very subtle, literally 7-frame Fight Club reference to tie in Tyler to Ken, which might not have even been intentional except to me. I gotta ask Greta. It literally is a frame from Fight Club acknowledging that masculinity. And what I love is that forever, this will be kind of my Fight Club sister film. Like, to me, this is addressing masculinity in a way that is a film for girls, but so many people can get something out of it. The reason I love Fight Club is the only person in that movie that anchors Jack back to reality is the female energy of Marla. And all the masculine energy isn't negative or inherently evil, but it serves him negatively. And in this film, you need to find the female energy and the Ken energy. They balance each other out, and that's so important to me. So Barbie not only was funnier than I thought it was going to be, not only was better than I thought it was going to be, but it meant more to me than I thought it would. And it's a movie that I don't even have kids yet. I can't wait to show my kids that don't yet exist. So like this movie, everything.
So you need to do Barben Club. You need to do those two together.
If I had a Cinespia night, if they let me run one Hollywood Forever night, I would Barben Club. And it would be the most insane
Nobody
evening.
in the history of cinema, I bet, has ever drawn such a brilliant
I'd
comparison
have to speech
between,
first. I'd have to be like, this is why we're here at Barben Club, and the first 2 rules are you do talk about Barben Club because kids need to learn.
That's
so yeah, this movie meant the world to me, and I loved what Ryan brought to it, like Ryan Gosling's performance. I know there's like Oscar buzz already, but what he had to do to be so masculine in a way that some will see as self-effacing but wasn't. What he had to do to find a way to be hyper masculine in a way that was like comedic but never self-deprecating to the point where it made masculinisms bad. And like as a very like I love the gym. I love Fight Club. I love UFC. I love all the things that so many people that I respect and admire think are evil. Like a lot of people I really appreciate are like, oh, that stuff, all that. And like, I feel like masculinity has a parentheses toxic around it because the society right now, like it's like Fight Club. We got some bad PR. Guys are messing up. But like this movie made
I
it
agree with you though, but I agree.
There's an inherent like this is bad. And the movie didn't ever say it was bad.
Know.
It said we need to figure this stuff out and make it work for everybody. So this movie was kind of like me going like, look, see, we can have a dojo house, but we need to not make sure it doesn't get rid of the dream house. Like we can have these things, but find a place for everyone and understand that this it's a yin yang, it's a symbiosis, not a parasitic relationship. So what that was almost single-handedly what the Kens brought. So Simu's performance, Ryan's performance, obviously
Simu
the writing.
was amazing.
So
Simu was
good.
a great dancer.
So and that scene, like that reference, like the classic toxic era of masculinity where they go back to like literally like fighting, and all of that was commentary.
Hysterical.
Genius. So yeah, I mean I could literally do an hour and a half on Ken, but yeah, I love this film.
The laugh out loud moment for me was the guitars. when all the women
Singing into the
had
eyes
to
for 4 minutes
pretend
ago.
that they were into it, because there isn't a female out there watching that didn't at some point in high school have a boyfriend that was
Enjoy
like,
that.
babe, listen to me play the guitar. Whatever it was usually the guitar.
Yep.
I was roaring in my theater.
And that was great because it's literally guys think that is something, and we want that to
you're
mean
so
something.
proud of
and
it.
we exactly. And I love that
and
it
that's
addressed
why
that.
we sit there and go, great.
And we don't
You're
thank you enough
you're
for
great,
it.
honey.
That's the thing is like women don't get
Nicely
the
done.
credit for being like, that's a weird thing. Then that's what this movie did. It went like, hey, they should get credit for enjoying
No, we
this.
had
That's
to
what it
endure
really is.
So many bad guitar
Like
performances.
Matchbox 20 is
Matchbox
fantastic for
20.
us, but we know it's not always for you. But
Yeah.
we acknowledge, this movie acknowledges like, hey, we're so sorry, but also let us have this. And it doesn't say it's bad. It just says like, it's different for us. I loved it.
Yeah.
I adore this film.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those films, and we're going to get into the award season talk at the very end of this after we talk about Oppenheimer, but I think you're going to be hearing Barbenheimer at the Oscars. It's going to be a Barbenheimer Oscars.
I want Downey Jr. v. Ryan Gosling for the
That is
opposite
the show-
roles
That is
ever.
going to be a showdown for the ages.
Like that's almost like, I mean, the last time Downey Jr. was up for the Oscar, I believe, was for Tropic Thunder opposite Heath Ledger's Joker. It's almost that level of duality
Wow.
of insane performances. 2008.
You know what would be even better than them both getting nominated? If they died.
Oh, you know what? Bump up Gosling to best lead, and then the Downey supporting,
he
and
has
that's
to-
the double win.
Ken has to be supporting. That's
Doesn't
the
it?
whole
No, that
point.
is the point. I'm
He
just
really,
for the
but
sake of the walk away.
But
I
it's
just want the two
arguable.
wins.
It
Yeah.
is arguable that it is a lead role.
'Cause,
It's hard
like,
to say.
Because it defined lead versus supporting, because it's the lead
I know.
of that side of the film, but it's a supporting role to Barbie being Barbie.
Yes.
He's not just Ken. He is Knuff.
He is more than
He's
Ken.
more than Knuff. I need that sweater. Mattel, please send me that sweater.
By the way, speaking of Mattel, they've got some other toy movies in the works.
And if they're this good, we're in for a twice-ance.
Hot Wheels.
Yeah.
Okay.
J.J. Abrams, right?
J.J. Abrams is doing the Hot Wheels one. Daniel Kaluuya is doing Barney. And then Vin Diesel is doing, is it Rock'em Sock'em? I don't know Rock'em Sock'em.
Rock'em Sock'em they did with Real Steel with that was an adaptation of with Sean Levy and Hugh Jackman. Remember
But I think they're doing one
they're
with
doing
Vin.
a more literal one? Oh, fascinating. I mean, good for them. I want this shared universe, this toy shared universe.
So what do you, like, moving forward, do you think, I mean, it's not going to just be Mattel. It's going to be, do you think Hollywood is just going to start, because it's obviously we're into nostalgia right now, right? Between Super Mario Brothers and Barbie. How do you think studios sort of lean into this in the right way? Because you can't just say, oh, we're going to make more toy. People just want more toy movies. It's the fact that this is such a good toy movie.
Have Lord
that
and
makes
Miller
it work.
consult. That's the first step.
okay.
But I think nostalgia can be wielded correctly, because what nostalgia is to me is us acknowledging that we felt better about our past and we don't know what our future is. And the uncertainty of our future is what Oppenheimer's about, which we're about to get into. But I think as long as you look back with the lens of how do we remind ourselves what worked about that time to make our future better, not just looking back. I think a big problem that America has is we go like, remember when things were good? And we remember the now that's what I call music version of it. There were lots of bad songs on with these good songs. There were lots of bad times for a lot of people while things we thought were good were happening. If we look back at the 50s, we can be like, yeah, like burgers were this much, 12 cents for a comic book, all these things. Yeah, but like people were not allowed to drink out of the same water fountains. Like there was so much wrong that we just go like, this was good for blank. And so like and this much to a much less important sense. If we look back at movies with too much nostalgia, then we just go like, remember when things were great? Yeah, but this was happening to our economy. This was happening to a certain group of people. This was how we perceived a certain group of people. So I think nostalgia should be used as a weapon of achieving the feeling of good, but with the knowledge of progress.
Yes.
So that's what Barbie did. Barbie went like, remember how great this was? Let's go forward.
The fact that Mattel leaned so heavily into their vision
Yeah.
made it a film for adults.
Make Hot Wheels about improving the way we handle emissions. Make Hot Wheels about like how important it is to get the word out about like EV being a problem for certain lithium issues, but also solving this issues. Make Rock'em Sock'em about like, you know, concussion trauma, but how important it is for fighters to have an outlet to fight. Like, you know, the whole point of Rock'em Sock'em is you hit them enough and their head pops off. Make it about like, you know, some
Is
people.
that what it is? I don't know.
Rock'em Sock'em, you literally have these two little things, you press, and you hit them enough, their head pops off, and you Rock'em Sock'em. So I would literally make a movie that is a commentary on how like some people innately need to fight. There are people born out of time. There are people that like actual warriors of UFC. That is what their art is. That is what their thing is, and we judge them for it. Make a commentary on how brutality has its place and how we need to have a place for this in society for people, and call it Rock'em Sock'em Robots. Like there's ways to make all these movies commentary, but still tie of the IP, still give us little references, still make it work, but make them more important than just a toy movie. And then we'll show up because it's actually an undercurrent of importance with the shiny object that it is.
The one thing that makes me excited is knowing J.J. Abrams. I read an article where he said it took him 3 years to sort of go, oh, now I know a way into this story, that it's going to be a much darker story than he originally anticipated, and that he wasn't going to do it unless he really knew how to approach it. And he's like, I got it now.
The history of NASCAR is crazy. Like, we literally invented cars that could outrun police cars because of Prohibition. Make Hot Wheels a commentary on, like, the police state. Like, there's things you can do. It's right there. Like, the American pastime of racing cars came out of them trying to escape cops. Like, make something that's looking at the way we live in an authoritarian police state and make it about us trying to get our power back as citizens. Like, there's a lot.
And that's what Barbie did. Essentially, that's what Barbie did. And that's why it's again, and we'll go into Nolan in a second. Nolan always says he gives his audience credit for being so smart. And Barbie did that too.
Yeah. At no point did I feel like I was being pandered to.
No. And the nice thing is the audience reaction to it being 90%. When I saw it a few days before it opened. And I'm always a little bit nervous when somebody takes a big swing like that. Are people going to embrace it? And the fact that they are smart enough to get it and know what it is and that it appeals to everybody is
You mentioned
wonderful.
the montage at the end being like what you identified with and with your mom and everything else.
Yeah, it just hit me in an emotional way. There was just something about it that it was like a gut punch.
With you being a woman in this industry that is so tricky for women, was the element of one, the Helen Mirren joke, the like casting Margot Robbie is exactly wrong for this, but were there elements of the weird Barbie, normal Barbie, the stereotypical Barbie, other Barbies, like the everyone's important, everyone's a Barbie? Like, how did that resonate for you, having been in the industry and seen that be the opposite? Like, because there's so much like, you have to be this year, you've got to be this season, you've got to be like, the movie was about everyone should be able to play all toys.
I will say this. So before I was a host, I was a model, and I was never in fashion.
Oh,
I
interesting.
was never in fashion. It was always, this year it's this look, or this year it's this look. And I never felt like, I felt accepted because I made my living that way. And of course, your worth comes from within. But I was never the it girl.
Sure.
Does that make sense? So if that sort of is a and I think it's kind of the same as hosting. Sometimes they're looking for this, or sometimes they're looking for that. Sometimes they want actors hosting. Sometimes they want comedians hosting. So you're always, and it's not about gender, because I've just sort of always just done my thing. And of course, there's going to be obstacles in the way, whether it's that you're female or whether it's something else that's in your way. It's always like, I'm just not the it girl of the moment. I've never felt like I was. Maybe this is my moment. This is it. I'll be wearing pink for the next 5 years.
Oh, that's good. That's the season. You are the it of season.
And that's the thing is, a lot of my hosting gigs, I dress very, very girly. And I'm like, now I can finally
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
But, so that did like hit. Like that was a...
It did. But like I said, like I never had, and maybe that's why that moment, like you said, hit me, because I never had a complicated relationship with Barbie.
Yeah.
And that was the moment that I understood, I think, that a lot of people did.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, you experiencing something but seeing others.
It felt like that was the moment where it transitioned from being my Barbie movie to everybody's Barbie movie.
I love that.
I'm going to make myself cry right now.
That's so great. I love that.
Okay, so
Come on, Barbie,
I did
let's go
forget
party.
to do the critics' consensus for Barbie, so let's finish on that. The critics' consensus is Barbie is a visually dazzling comedy whose meta humor is smartly complemented by submersive storytelling. Couldn't concur more, and we will get into award season talk at the end of this because I have a lot to say about that too. Are you ready to Oppenheimer?
Let's Oppenheimer. Second half of the day. Let's get into it.
Ding! Second round. Okay, like I mentioned earlier, Tomato Meter score matched the audience score. These two are the cutest ever. The critics' consensus, Oppenheimer marks another engrossing achievement from Christopher Nolan that benefits from Murphy's tour de force performance and stunning visuals. Your overall thoughts on Oppenheimer? I meant to ask you your ranking of Greta Gerwig's films, but obviously Barbie's your number one. If you say one of your top films
it's literally
of all
like
time. It's my favorite.
I love Greta Gerwig, but I don't often find myself like seeking out a rewatch. I like when I'm in the theater, I have a time, and I'm not gonna watch Little Women every Christmas. Like I'll probably watch Barbie every summer.
Yeah.
Like you know what I mean? Like there's just an impact, and that's no shade on her. It's just this one hit me in a personal way. Oppenheimer is very interesting in that I will probably rewatch this the least of Nolan's films, but I can acknowledge it's probably the most technically perfect. So I can acknowledge that like it might be his masterpiece, but my experience of it was so negative in a positive way. I felt so much more than I was comfortable with. I was so impacted by the atrocities of man that I didn't enjoy myself watching it. And maybe that was especially interesting with the duality of my experience with Barbie, where I was like, we're gonna make it. We got this, everyone. And then I left Barbie like, we've just gone too far. So my experience with Nolan films are usually a kind of paranoid, oppressive, police state, surveillance, uncomfortable. Like I love that Dark Knight acknowledges what we were going through, with surveillance in a very interesting way, where Batman's like, this is too much power for one man to have. And I love that Dark Knight Rises acknowledge that like having everyone surveilled and under the scrutiny of this militant regime is no way to live, and freedom is actually being able to be your own person. And I love that, Memento is about like, if your memories aren't even yours, like what do you identify with as a person? Like who are you without your journey and your memories and your experience? All of Nolan's The Prestige is such a beautiful commentary on what it is to even be human and what yourself even is as a commentary. So Nolan's very personal to me. I love Nolan's work. Oppenheimer was truly an experience of borderline nihilism of, the human genius has always been corrupted. And I think that every genius that, we've lived through is a terrifying commentary on the way we lead ourselves. Like The Social Network, I think, is the greatest horror movie of the last 40 years. The Social Network is literally how, when we connect, it should be a force of good, and look what we made social media. And I feel like Oppenheimer is using some of that same commentary on, this is a man who was able to smash the atom using theoretical math, and was able to, in his head, go, that's what is possible. And then we were able to build it. That is alchemy. That is magic. And then we turn it into a weapon. And then we put it upon people that were not deserving, that were not even. It's a commentary on the destructive nature of man to a scale that is so horrific that when you hear the numbers at the end of the film, it's a toss away. And I think that was very conscious. We killed hundreds of thousands of people and ruined millions of lives, and we did it as a political ploy, and we did it. We crossed out one of 12 cities because someone wanted a vacation there, and I do perceive human nature as that flippant about lives. So the idea that someone can be so genius that they can change the world in a way that they felt like they had to just so someone else didn't change the world first, and it wasn't at us. The idea that all of the most genius people of their time can gather together and literally build a city, and then build something in that city that's going to irreparably become the new state of warfare. We're just really, really, really smart apes with sticks. And the bigger we make our sticks, the more apes we can take out. And this was such a fascinating, uncomfortable journey of perfect filmmaking, telling the perfect story of how perfectly messed up we are. And so I won't find myself going like, I'm gonna put on that cautionary tale again, because it's too late. It's not even a cautionary tale. And the closest we have to it is the last 5 minutes being like, I think they were right. We did destroy the planet with this tool. I think that's around the corner with AI. I think that's around the corner with what we've built. We have so rapidly gone from the age of connect us all, through connecting us all has made us hate each other, through we have to try to reconnect with each other because of situations out of our control. Okay, now we're reconnecting. Let's figure out how to do it and take away art from artists. Let's take away, the only thing that makes us human is our ability to cause other people emotion. The thing that we live to die, but the point is the life that we live should impact others in a positive way. We don't often. So this movie is that to me. And I think that this is going to be much the way The Social Network is to me the horror movie of the last 20 years, because it was so prophetic towards what was to come. This to me feels like a commentary on what's about to come, and it scares the crap out of me because this movie is about a time 80 years ago or 60 years ago. So this movie was hard to watch because it was so good. And I love it.
No, it makes sense. And I agree. I agree with the first thing that you said about technically when people say, I hate when people use the word masterpiece.
Sure. Because it's subjective.
That word, it's like, I think a masterpiece usually has to have age behind it, right? You can't call something a masterpiece like when Van Gogh painted, like you can't say the next day, that's a masterpiece. Or maybe somebody did at that time and was told,
we'll see
let's
there.
slow down there.
Starry Night's drying out.
I think technically it was magnificent. I think if this doesn't win the Oscar for screenwriting, there is something wrong. I mean, I know I haven't seen everything that comes out. It's coming out this year, Killers of the Flower Moon. There's going to be all kinds of stuff. But it is so brilliant. I watched an interview that just floored me, if you've watched any of the interviews that Christopher Nolan and Robert Downey Jr.
Genius.
did together, did you see where Robert Downey Jr. said he went in for ADR? Which ADR, for people who don't know, is like usually after a film. I'm sure most people watching this know this. You go and you do anything that wasn't captured on the day. Technically, there could have been something flying by, or you have to redo your lines.
Yeah.
And usually on a film of this size, especially like a superhero film or something where there's a lot going on, it would be pages and pages of ADR, and you'd be there for hours. Robert Downey Jr. had one line of ADR because Christopher Nolan is such a technician.
Wow.
There was nothing wrong on the day. Nothing had to be done. And the only line was a line that Nolan had originally written to the script and taken out and then decided he wanted to put back in.
One line.
And it had nothing to do with, like, technically they didn't get it on the day.
That's incredible.
Isn't that amazing?
He's such a
And that
genius.
is this film. And there has been nothing more exciting for me. I love Nolan. And also he's a hero. And he's just... it makes me so proud. I'm going to start crying talking about this, but it makes me so proud to see so many people embracing this movie. I didn't even talk about the records that it broke.
For an adult drama, a 3-hour adult drama.
The #1 R-rated movie of the weekend since 2019's Joker.
Wow. And that's a hell of an IP.
The biggest worldwide opening for a biographical film. It beat out Bohemian Rhapsody, previously had that record.
Thank you.
And that, to me, gives me so much hope. We knew Barbie was going to be a hit, right?
Right.
But the fact that people are coming out of this movie, and I've spent days Googling everything that happened in his life. And that's what a great film obviously does. And I can't remember. I think it might have been Bohemian Rhapsody the last time that I did that.
Yeah, and that's a fun overall. There's obviously darkness in it. But you go into that movie for a concert experience.
Yeah.
You don't go into Oppenheimer or anything but dread.
Yeah. And I do think, and the one criticism that I keep hearing over and over is that he didn't show the atrocities of what the bomb did. And
I thought he did. I thought the scene where
he showed the body on the ground.
Sure. But even the mental experience of what he went through, I felt like really encapsulated. I think if we left Oppenheimer, because we don't leave Oppenheimer much, I think if we left Oppenheimer and went to Nagasaki or went to Hiroshima, it would have been almost gratuitously profiteering off their deaths.
I agree.
And instead, we have an experience where he's being applauded and the silence is the atrocity. When he's being applauded and it turns into screams, or when he's being applauded and then he sees their faces melting. To me, that was not grandstanding off of the horrors we've done. It was showing that he was realizing in real time, this is the rest of his life. He's going to live with these nightmares. He's going to endure that. He did this.
And Nolan, as you know, shoots everything practically. He puts everything in the camera. If he was going to take footage from way back and throw it into the movie, I don't know, it would have lost the message, the continuity.
It would have been grotesque to see people dying that really died.
And it was the first script he wrote in the first person. This was Robert Oppenheimer. This is what he would have experienced in his world through his eyes. He was not there. They could have showed him watching a news broadcast, sure. But seeing what his imagination was, what was happening in his imagination, and what I think is so fascinating is how this is a human tragedy. Like you said, this was a scientist who was so incredibly brilliant. Like you said, like started out his career splitting atoms, and that was his focus. And he wasn't involved in politics, and he wasn't involved with war. He was brought into this whole thing. And he died very, very young, and and obviously was plagued for the rest of his life by what happened. And I kept thinking, the one takeaway I had from this was we now have the perspective in 2023 that no, we have not had a nuclear annihilation yet. Right. He didn't know that.
Right. Even on the day.
What he was living with up until his death and what was going on in the world, and he was, I'm sure, certain that he had caused immediate nuclear annihilation. I'm sure he really felt that was within the scope of reality.
It's
within
still our number one threat.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
if you
still
think about
is.
it, like that, we talk about the codes, we talk about nuclear, like it's still, and this is a lot later, decades later. So I absolutely agree.
But
and
I think he
wrong.
probably felt like it was imminent.
Yeah.
Immediately imminent, and living with that.
And I thought they did a great job making his theatricality and his penchant for verbosity so much a part of how this happened. I like that his arrogance was part of how this occurred, was him being like, I want to be the guy, I want to be the famous one, and how that was weaponized by Downey's character, but also in a way that, like, I think, Matt Damon's character weaponized as well. I think it was really interesting how the all things had to line up to allow Oppenheimer to exist exactly how he was. His womanizing, his penchant for making irrational decisions, all of that led to the bomb, and it might not have occurred before, because one of the only times we heard about the Russians was them going the wrong way with something. Like, one of the only times we heard about something that was getting close was that element. And it's also really interesting how, some hosts are saying, like, well, yeah, you should have had his clearance taken away, like, the communist ties and all that stuff. And it's so interesting how there's so much ingrained fear of certain elements that never left us from that time. Like, you say the word communist, and a lot of people use it as a buzzword and don't look into the time and how they, people were treated and then like judged and labeled, and like how some people weren't and they were labeled as this thing. And then people also don't look at like the ramifications of people leaving that era. And we're seeing so much now where people are put into tribes because we're so tribal as people and we're so much more connected. And I feel like we're entering an era of your blank, this is a problem. Your blank, this is a problem. And it mirrors that world. And it's a very cautionary tale even beneath the nukes. And I feel like all the communist allegory is very indicative of what we could become very quickly again today. And it really scares me that nobody's talking about that. They're talking about, they didn't show this, they didn't have this, they didn't have this. I'm like, yeah, but this is a cautionary tale in like 15 levels.
Yeah, and he didn't hit you over the head like a lot of films might label this guy a womanizer, and it would have been very exploitative, or it would have been, oh, he was a good guy or a bad guy. He showed the complexity of a human, of a human being put in that situation. Who are the other standouts for you? This cast sheet,
it's insane.
It's like, it took me a second. I have to be honest. There was a couple people, because there were so many people popping on and off screen, where I was like, oh, there's Rami Malek, oh, there's Matt Damon, and then I would settle into it, but because people would kind of pop in, the way that like, okay, it would, for a second, take me out of it, because you get so immersed.
And I can see that. I personally, but I get it.
Yeah.
I'm going to be totally biased and shamelessly name drop. I got 3 buddies in this movie. So like,
oh my God. Can I try to pick?
Oh, it'd be awesome. Because and for me, this is a point of pride of just seeing friends that did such exceptional work that like I got to see people that I know and care about in a Nolan film.
If you're buddies with Jason Clarke, I need his.
That'd be great though. He's so
I've loved him for so long. I thought he was a standout.
Okay, my favorite performance was a redemption for some bull that wasn't his fault, and it was like Alden. So Alden, I feel like Alden really got to show people who he is as an actor. Yeah. Because Alden's incredible and he's always been incredible.
Yeah, but I like Solo. I don't know what I mean.
That's what I mean, redemption. Because it's not on like.
But he was good at it. What are you talking about?
The amount, like what he had to disappear. Like I just feel like Alden.
Well, you went through it with him. I'm sure.
Yeah, like I was there when he got like soloed. Like so. Basically, for me, Alden.
We can only laugh now because he's had this bravo performance.
And he's so good in Cocaine Bear too. To me, Alden is like one of the greatest talents of our generation, and I feel like there was a time where people are only going to know him as that Han Solo movie that didn't work out. So I like Beautiful Creatures. He's great in. He's been so good for long enough that I was like, this will blow over. And when it didn't, I was like, oh, if we lose one of the great actors of our time due to things out of his control, due to 2 sets of directors, due to studio stuff, that would have been like a shame. So maybe it was my personal investment, but mostly it was like, this guy's too talented to not be revered, and he's like acting around Downey, like doing circles around and keeping up, like sparring in the room with this incredible performance that Downey's giving. That's insane. The great and super underrated Scotty Grimes is literally, he grew up 3 streets from me. So Scotty Grimes was, when I told people I was moving to Hollywood, the only person that ever made it out was Scott. So he was like, we've only known each other a couple of years now, but he was always that figurehead of like, you can get out and be like Scott. So like, it was really cool.
So who did he play? Remind everybody.
He was the other guy in the room with Downey and Alden. So I got to see 2 people I know opposite Downey. Incredible work, like truly sensational work.
And what did they say about Downey behind the scenes? Come on.
A force of nature, and like they were so intimidated but so impressed at how much like he just connects.
Unreal. He's unreal. Truly. And if you again watch any of the press that he has done, how off the cuff freaking funny this man is. The stuff that comes out of his mouth, the stuff that he comes up with. And casting against type,
making him someone you're like, okay, I keep wanting to like him, but he's messing up. I keep wanting to like him, but he's the problem. I loved that choice.
Well, the other thing I want to point out technically, what I loved about between the 2 hearings, I know they were shot one black and white, and you went back and forth, black and white to color. But what I loved was the Oppenheimer hearing, the set decoration. Yeah. They made it as bland as it would be in real life. So many times in films, you see a courtroom or a hearing room. And if you've ever been to in a courtroom, not that I've been into many, but if you've ever walked into one, they're never grand. They look like they don't have
a room
with a ugly ass table.
And them showing the setup
with
for like 3 frames.
Too
That
many
really
men
quick
sitting around a too
crouched.
small a table, and how claustrophobic that felt.
Yeah.
And then my favorite thing that he did, and my favorite moments of the movie, were just seeing people testify and seeing Oppenheimer slouched behind that person, listening and watching everything
His eyes, man.
on his face.
Yeah.
And how he got defeated and how he wouldn't fight for himself and everything that was. Oh my God!
Well,
What a
I love that the black
way
and white
he shot that.
It was objective versus subjective.
Yeah.
Like the color versus black and
Right.
white. I love that everything that was provable and on film and things that occurred on the record were black and white. And I love that everything that was someone's emotional experience that was color. Like I thought that was so genius because our emotions are in color. When you remember emotionality, it's in color. When you remember
wow.
facts, it's in black and white. So we shot the film, facts were black and white,
Yeah.
and color was emotional experience. And how the color and the emotion is what shaped how we got to the bomb.
Okay, who's your third friend? And I'm going to tell you my favorite performance, aside from Cillian Murphy.
So much love for Jack Wade. Jack is
okay.
yeah. Jack is one of the greatest. I think Jack is such a unique force in film because Jack is always that guy you're like, man, he seems awesome, and I want to know. And I love that they made him the guy that was like, I'm really good at science and I'm really bad at
So who
personing.
did he play?
He's the one that looks through the most memorable moment was he's looking through the windshield. Like, I don't need the goggles. I got the windshield.
Yes,
It's fine.
yeah.
So he's the scientist that's kind of like, I'm really a genius, but I'm going to keep like dropping the ball in certain, logical science choices.
Okay.
But what I love about Jack is whenever he shows up in a movie, I personally immediately am always like, I'd watch that movie. Like I'd go off on that journey and find out how he got in that room. He brings so much history and so much experience. And in real life, Jack is maybe the kindest person I've met in this industry. Like Jack, I was doing press at Prey and Jack crashed my interview. Like me and him started quoting Paul Rudd memes at each other across the red carpet. And then he came over and jumped in my interview and we did a whole thing together. Cause Jack's just the kind of guy that's like, let's make this bigger and more exciting and let's do a thing. And Jack is such a kind soul that it actually translates on screen. Like not a lot of people that are that kind do you immediately go like, I want to know more about them. Cause he's so good that it translates.
It's like a Chris Pratt kind of energy.
But I think this movie needed that. And I think casting Jack was genius.
And I think Matt Damon too. Matt Damon had that energy.
He was like friendly Tommy Lee Jones.
Yes.
He was like somehow, he was the Tommy Lee Jones role,
Friendly Tommy
but with a little undercurrent without the
Right.
buffoonery.
Yeah, no, and I thought he was another one. He came on screen. I was like, okay, is he going to take me out of this because it's Matt Damon? Because
He was so good.
It's just there was something about this film that it was just, and maybe it's because he didn't cast a huge movie star, like a well-known,
Right.
revered actor, but not a movie star. That when the movie stars started to pop in. But speaking of movie stars, and I hate to bring up. I don't want to sound like I'm only saying this because she's a woman, but
Emily Blunt.
Emily Blunt's scene, holy bonkers.
One of the best scenes in the film, in a film of scenes.
So I almost forgot, because Emily Blunt has done so many commercial films in the last couple of years. I almost forgot what a great actress she is.
Yeah.
I mean, she's a movie star, as we say. Sometimes we say people have the movie star quality, and she has it in spades. But it reminded me when she sat there, and a fellow actor told me this, that they've studied Emily Blunt because she's their favorite actor. And one thing you learn as an actor is how to actively listen to somebody and not just be like deer in headlights
Sure.
waiting for their next line. And what she does is she puts her tongue on the inside of her mouth, goes like this. And it's the first time she ever put her tongue on the outside of her mouth. So she's like licking her lips when he's talking at her, the Jason Clarke
that's
character.
cool.
And like, she just knows she has him. She has him, and she's milking that moment. And she's like, "I'll let you finish, sweetie." And then she's licking her chops, and then she unleashes. That was the moment of the film for me. I was like, "Give this woman an Oscar
And how much
nomination."
buildup there was to that moment, because we'd seen all the moments between her and Oppenheimer, and we'd seen their relationship.
Yes.
And then when
she was so frustrated with him.
and the prosecutor being like, and the defendant lawyer, what do they call those? Not the prosecutor. The guy on your side, the guy defending you. Is that defense attorney, right?
Defense attorney, yeah.
When the defense attorney was like, "Are you sure you want her up there?" And then you see Oppenheimer being like, "Oh, more than anything, I know this." And then she does that, and you're like, yes, that whole relationship in one scene, you get it. And you get why the Florence Pugh relationship doesn't make sense. You get why the womanizing all of the past doesn't make sense. And then the bond of them together when he's laying outside and she finds him, using the edit that way to cut back to that scene. I thought that flashbacks usually don't work for me. This movie used flashbacks so well that it didn't make the audience feel dumb. It enhanced the memory. My favorite thing about memory is like, you could remember something and be like, oh, right, that's why that was important to me. But then you can have one thing spark an addition to that memory, and then it connects the memory and it recontextualizes your whole experience because of the way our brains work. Like our frontal lobe, like it attaches differently to the back of our brain where we store memories, and then you can cause new neural pathways. The movie is edited that way. The movie is edited to allow you to experience different experiences with a memory that doesn't feel like shoehorned in. It's not like you didn't get it. It's like, here's some more data. It's
the editing as much as the screenwriting.
Yeah.
Is incredible.
And the casting. Like I talked about Jack's warmth. Also, Scott, his ability
This isn't even the whole cast.
That's insane. So without Jack's warmth, there wouldn't have been someone that you were like rooting for, even though they were a little not as smart with the social cues. Without Alden being so deliberate and calculating, you wouldn't have cared about someone that was, dancing around Downey Jr. Without Scott's warmth that didn't have a lot of screen time, but whenever he delivered, without David Dastmalchian, who's so
I love him.
good every time, but maybe his least creepy character. Like David's so good at being that guy. They're like, I don't trust him. He played like a guy in this, but because it's David, you've had this like undercurrent of like, I don't like everything he's doing to my guy because of how he's playing this. The casting in this made you the against type Downey, the somewhat against type Florence Pugh. Everyone in this had exactly the purpose that their energy brought, and then it was written for them in a way that I couldn't see anyone else in any of these roles. It was genius. Like the casting, the editing, the writing, the directing, like that's how I love it.
Also, Oppenheimer, Cillian Murphy wasn't bad. We haven't even mentioned him yet.
The first leading performance since 28 Days Later, I think.
I think so. Well, his first for sure with Nolan.
For sure.
I mean, they've worked together for so
obviously
many
Peaky
years.
Blinders, he's the lead. But like, I feel like we haven't had a leading movie with him since 28 Days Later.
Yeah, and I feel like he was comfortable with that.
Oh, so much. 3 hours of comfort. That guy was just like, I'm the best.
That's what I like most about his performance, is that he almost played it like a supporting actor. Does that make sense? In that he didn't overdo anything.
At any
point. He didn't overcook anything. He didn't dramatize. He didn't indicate. When actors indicate an emotion, he just felt the emotion because the audience picks up on subtlety. The subtlety of the performance is what made it a chef's kiss for me.
And the fact that we watched a guy that invented the atomic bomb, we felt sympathy, and we also felt empathy. Two very different emotions tied to him.
So I had my Barbie cry moment in this movie, and that was in the years later when they aged them up, and he gets his award finally. And in that flash, I got the years that he went through to get to that moment, because we've seen that before in Hollywood, everywhere, where somebody is vilified or whatever. And I'm not saying that he was a hero, but where somebody for years, even Alden to a certain degree, and then they finally have their moment. And I really do believe that usually that does happen. It might be 20 years later, it might be 30 years later, it might be a year later, but the fact that he had that moment, I burst into tears.
And the fact that we have in life experienced as viewers award ceremonies and knowing something felt off, the simple line of like, know that it's for you and not know that's for them, not for you. Know that they're giving the award to get rid of their guilt, not for you to receive it. And how real that feels and how much that affects the entire experience of award shows, something we deal with, how that affects people's guilt when you see people get like VFW awards and stuff.
Yes.
It's for the giver, not as much the receiver a lot of the time.
Yes, the Oscars honorary award.
Yeah, they're like, oh, sorry, we messed up for 30 years. Alden Best Supporting too, just because I want that dude to get that love.
I'm going to start out this conversation by saying that Christopher Nolan was never nominated for Best Director for Inception.
Wow. I didn't realize.
I believe his first nomination was for Dunkirk as a director.
I think only.
Yeah, only.
Shenanigans.
Bananas.
This one
So
definitely.
with that, he will 100% get nominated.
Yeah.
I mean, sure as sugar, this man is getting a nomination. This is a definite Best Picture nominee.
100%.
And let's bring Barbie into this conversation too, as an overall, because I do believe that there's going to be an Barbenheimer Oscars.
Yeah, I think it's our pink horse.
Do we feel that Barbie's getting a Best Picture?
Nom, yes.
Yes.
Win, I don't think, but I think it'll be worthy of the campaign alone for our joy. But I don't.
Is it going to be this year's Top Gun? Where people are like, it was commercial, it was.
Where
does that
it
make sense?
gets tossed away because it was commercial, even though it was a great film.
And also
I think
came
Greta
out in the
Gerwig
summer.
will get a nom.
Yeah.
And
I think she will too.
I think Nolan's going to get the win, but that might also be some legacy.
You think he's going to win?
Yeah. Because
have
of
you
what we
seen
just
Killers
said.
of the Flower Moon?
I haven't.
Have you
But
seen Maestro?
Scorsese's won.
He has one, but I mean, it's really hard to say. I haven't seen it. I haven't.
Yeah, I've only seen the trailer.
Yeah.
But I do think that Nolan has only gotten the one nom. I do think that this is the talked about movie of what this movie represents. I think this is the, oh my God, it made 82 million. It's an adult drama. This is the, we can make films that aren't just IP. It's that movie. So I think that's why he gets it for a lot of reasons, and it's deserved. Like, it's not like you get it because of like, thanks, but like, oh my God, you made this art. But I don't know if Barbie will get that Top Gun approach where it gets all these things. I think Gosling might actually genuinely get the win.
You do?
I do. I think it's
above Downey Jr. because they would both be in supporting, assuming they both go in supporting. I don't think that Ryan's going in lead for Ken.
I don't think so either. But I do think Best Supporting might go to, because it's dramatic, it's comedic, it's a lot. It's like I think he could get it. Like, it's so memorable. Like, I don't think I've seen a performance like that left me since Downey in Tropic Thunder.
Is there a meme, like a Barbenheimer meme for those two being nominated? Like
there will be.
What would it be?
Rybert Downey Ling. Rybert Downey Ling. Junior. But like, but I really want to see that because it's so pink and so black and white.
Yeah.
Like, we barely saw him in color. I'd love the pinkness of Ken and the darkness of
100%.
But I honestly think they could be the two front runners, and I could see Ryan pulling it out at the end.
Yeah.
But I also I'm just so happy for Downey because I love Marvel. If you know me, you know I love Marvel.
Yeah, we know this.
I am so tired of Downey being Tony Stark to everyone. That man is such a champion actor beyond Iron Man. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, I think, is a better movie than any of the Iron Mans. I'm saying it on camera.
Wow.
I think that Chaplin is one of the best performances of all time. I think that what Downey's able to do outside of Tony Stark is as good.
Oh, yeah.
And thus, I don't
100%.
want, like, whenever he posts on Instagram, people are just like, oh, there's my Tony Stark. I'm like, no, it's Downey Jr.
Well, I was just praying during this whole thing that people wouldn't bring up Iron Man and make the comparison, like in his interviews. Like, just don't even ask about it.
Let
we
him
all
be
know he
Downey.
did it.
Yeah.
We all know he did it. What are you going to ask? You know,
that's why I don't want him or Chris Evans to come back. I honestly, I know they're going to back in Secret War because they probably will, but I would rather Chris Evans get to be an actor and Downey Jr. get to be an actor.
That's where I disagree. I want them always to come back. I always want sequels. I always want spinoffs. I'm never like, leave it alone. Don't touch it. Don't do another one. Barbie 2, here we go.
See, I'm weird about reboots. I'm like, reboot even my favorite movie because worst case, it's bad and it'll make people love mine more.
Oh, I want a Back to the Future reboot. My favorite movie of all time. And I want, I can't think of his name. Spider-Man.
Tom
Holland to play Marty's son, who rediscovers the DeLorean. Oh, yeah. I've pitched this to the producers. I've told them this. Frank Marshall, I was like, Frank, reboot this. He modeled his whole performance in Spider-Man after Marty McFly. He is a baby Marty McFly.
With a time machine.
Yeah, we digress.
Michael J. Fox would be the best Spider-Man.
Let's go back award season.
But
and
award
sequels,
season,
and sequels, too. So what else do I mean, production design for Barbie, costuming for Barbie, hair and makeup for Barbie. Does Margot get a Best Actress nomination?
She should. It's interesting that everyone's talking about Ryan Gosling. But I think Margot's scene on the bench does not get enough conversation. The You're Beautiful moment with the older woman, that human moment. She goes through this incredible realization in that crazy 2001: A Space Odyssey sequence of, like, you know, what it is to be a person and, like, going through the pain of being alive, but the beauty of being alive. Like, all that's Margot. Like, all of that's her performance. But I don't know if it was... It's funny that in a movie that's as flashy as it is, I don't know if that performance is flashy enough for people to realize how deep that performance is.
Well, and that's the thing. She's so perfect for it and perfect in it that it's almost seamless. You don't see the work.
It's like Helen Mirren saying, like, she was the wrong to cast her. And that's the problem that she might have faced the Oscars. Because it's like, oh, we found a literal Barbie who's actually that talented. Barbie's made. No, there's work.
Can we just also give her credit for the fact that she produced this movie? She is the one that made this whole thing happen.
And that's so incredible.
Yeah. And America Ferrera, does she get a nomination?
She was pretty great. I also love that they did the bait and switch where it was America Ferrera's memories, but they didn't make it a young America Ferrera. I like that they moved her expectations.
That was really smart.
Because I was like, oh no, we're seeing a girl that looks a lot like a young America Ferrera. Oh, the kid, that's way better. Because a lesser film would have been like, it was actually her memories. And they'd be like, oh, don't pander. But instead it was like a mom and daughter story that's way more about, like, empowering women that are a multi-generational journey as opposed to just let's go back to the before times. Then that would have been nostalgia baiting.
100%.
Loved that.
One category I know they won't overlap is score and song. I think Ryan could get I Am Just Ken for best song.
So. And
original song.
Ludwig Göransson's score in this. Speaking of Donald Glover, Ludwig is the one who makes a lot of Donald Glover's beats. Metamodernism is as alive and well with Ludwig Göransson sounds. I think the score to this movie is enough that I probably will never, like, run to it because I would feel the horrors. Like, it feels so oppressive and ominous and, like, dark.
Yeah.
So score for Oppenheimer, editing for Oppenheimer. Yeah. Picture for Oppenheimer, director for Oppenheimer.
Yes.
I honestly, I mean, biases aside, Alden, Best Supporting. The movie's anchored on a lot of that performance. I don't think he's getting enough talks.
Well, people are talking about him a lot. And they're also talking about, I'm so bad with names. I couldn't even think of Tom Holland. They're also, who else are they talking about? Where is he? I can't find him. It's all good.
Him. But
not just Alden. Who's the other actor? He's not on my tip sheet here.
What performance was he? What did he do in the film?
And I can't think of the name.
Okay.
It's all good.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of best supporting, and then I mean, obviously, I think Cillian Murphy. I don't think I've seen a performance as good as his that I can think of off the top of my head for lead. Yeah. Like that was an insane performance. He carried a 3-hour movie about the atomic bomb. He carried a movie that was all exposition. This movie has one action sequence and it's silent and then deafening sound of horror. Like that is a exposition-based performance that he somehow carries for a very long runtime. That's a season of most shows.
Isn't it amazing that we've talked about this whole thing and not even referenced the scene with the bomb? You knew where I was going with that. Isn't that funny?
That's the power of this movie. Yeah. And that's so on his shoulders.
And it was Josh Hartnett.
Oh my God, he's so good in this.
Because maybe also I haven't seen him for a while, but he looks like a baby Aaron Sorkin now. Oh, yeah. I was like, is that a de-aged Aaron Sorkin?
He gave me like Redford vibes. He gave me like 70s, 80s Redford vibes, where he has that, you walk in, you're like, that guy's important.
And the quality I love about Redford is that he doesn't seem like he's acting. He's effortless, and he had that 100%. Quality in this movie.
And everyone directed by, like, I think one of the powers of Nolan as a director is everyone in this movie delivered a very, very, this is me living my life. I've got more life when I leave this frame. I'm bringing life to the scene. But everything is not just effortless. It's got weight of history to it. And not in the historical sense, in the literal character sense. Yeah. And I think Nolan is so good at making actors present. And one of the inside baseball here, I've worked with Nolan. I was in Dark Knight Rises very briefly. And to see his work...
I'm sorry, somebody buried the lead.
I'm trying not to name... I've already name-dropped 3 actors. I'm trying to not do it more. But I've gotten to see Nolan work firsthand. So it was really amazing to get to be on a set with Nolan and watch him.
Moment.
So I got to watch Nolan work.
So is it what everybody says, where he just all of a sudden you're filming? He doesn't go, action. It's not a big thing. He just kind of leads into it?
There's a scene that I'm in Dark Knight Rises that I didn't know they were filming. There's a scene when there's 2 of Bane's henchmen looking around and they see a stack of cars in the distance and they shot it in an IMAX camera. I didn't know that was in the movie until I watched the movie in theaters and went, hey, it was me. Like I'm literally, it's 4 seconds, but I knew because I was the one going like, huh. Like there's a scene of a bunch of cars stacked up showing that the city's blocked off in IMAX. This beautiful shot, had no idea. So like the way he directs is incredible because he trusts his casting, he trusts his actors, and then his notes are really beautifully subtle and like he'll just do a couple takes and then he'll be like, sentence, back to video.
Did he give you a note?
I think the one note he gave was, I was in a scene where they let a guy fall through the ice in Dark Knight Rises as like banishment or exile, or death or exile was the scene. And there was a moment where I was looking and I think he came over and just said, more cautious, as in like I was a threat to go too. Like he just gave me the note that like me watching this I wasn't safe because someone else was going out. It was that like I could be next, and I hadn't considered that because I was like, I'm just in this scene like over here. But he was like, he knew that everyone in the frame would be analyzed. He knew that his frame was so important that like I don't even speak in that scene. But he said more cautious because he wanted like, even if it just panned by me, the fear of the oppressiveness of Bane to always be present. So that one line, it was 2 words, and I was like, great note, and like it changed my whole dynamic of my entire character. And that was like, watching him work was always that. So to see Alden, who I did David Mamet Speed the Plow with once, and so that's a hell of a dense language play. To see Alden get to do what I think he's so good at, which is handle so much dialogue in a way that doesn't feel heavy-handed. You don't feel the paragraphs when Alden acts. And to see Nolan, who doesn't let that ever feel like not natural, that's why I think the performances of this are so great, because he's so good at directing with minimalist shaping, and then these actors are also good at delivering. This script's probably 200 pages long. Like, it's so dense.
Well, that's why I could never be an actor. Just the memorization. I can't even memorize one damn page. We have already gone over time. I'm sure we have.
I'm so sorry.
We had
Everyone
so
watching.
much to talk about. I feel like we've only scratched the surface.
And
we
I'm
may
sorry
have
for
to
name
just
dropping.
keep
It was
talking.
relevant. I was trying to not
You
to.
didn't at all. There was no name
get that
dropping. It was
crap in the comments.
fascinating. And
Love
now
it.
I'm going to like pick your brain for another hour before I let you leave. As always, just a joy to talk to you. Coy's a joy. I said this last time, but you are. You truly are. Let everybody know where they can find you.
You can hunt me down on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, every social media at Coy Jandreau, and on YouTube, I'm trying to get people into comic books themselves, the actual comics. So I'm giving people about 60 years worth of comic book knowledge in about 40 to 50 seconds, where if you like a character, I'm going like, hey, did you enjoy this? And then my favorite of their comics relating to that take on that character. So you can literally, I went to a comic store in San Diego and they called me, oh, you're that pointing guy. Because people have been coming in and going like, what are these comics? I want to find them.
Oh, that's so nice.
And I'm really trying to get people into the books themselves because that medium means a lot to me. And yeah, Twitter, Instagram, and all those things for trying to communicate my love of the world and philosophizing thusly. So just my name, CoyJandreau, and I love being here because we can wax poetic about truly incredible movies, and Rotten Tomatoes is a great platform to love on movies. So both of these being fresh means more people will see them, and movies getting a little bit of extra boost is always good. The box office is not a coincidence. These movies are great, and support your movie theater. See it in cinemas. I want these things to stay open. I love them much.
Well, I think it's going to have long, like the president of Warner Brothers said, it's going to have long legs, these two films.
So clever.
Thank you all for Barbenheimering with us. It was a true joy. I'm like schwitzing over here. I've been drinking way too much coffee. I'm like, every time you talk, I'm like, yeah.
I love, even though Barbenheimer happened because like the thing because of the pandemic, I love that Nolan left WB because of the timing and them releasing day and date, and then them picking the Nolan date for Barbie, and then it turning into Barbenheimer because the date Nolan wasn't going to move from turned into the Barbie date, and then they both benefited from it.
And it turned into a celebration of cinema. Darn it.
Even that is metamodernistic, that the reaction to the thing became a meme itself, and that reflects both of these movies' commentary on the times.
I know, it's insane. All right.
Big thing.
Thank you again.
Always happy to be here.
That was great. It was so much fun. Thank you so much for joining us on this very special double feature episode of the After Show. We will see you on the next one. Bye.